G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, and we've got an update on the two movies I've done about the Celtic Festival and the Combined Gaelic clans. One of the movies called the KKK bracket Kilted Celtic Clowns close bracket at the Australian Standing Stones bracket Slivers, and the other one is called Interview with the King of the Australian Gaelic Clans bracket Sean MacDonald Sheridan, Green Chief. They're in my scroll anyway. So we've got this phenomenon where we're living in Australia. And Australia was settled largely by people from the British Isles, and when they came here they decorated the landscape with British names. And there's as many of them here at the New England tablelands as there is anywhere else in Australia, because we were largely settled by Britons. Okay, and there are some people who just can't get used to the idea that they're living in Australia and celebrate the Australianness of it, because they're not comfortable with sitting on their bum on the ground and walking barefoot and playing a didgeridoo to celebrate their connection to the land. So they fixate on what their umpty-ump great-grandparents used to wear and used to talk like and listen to, and they make themselves their idea of a traditional costume from back then. And when Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, decided that he wanted to wear a kilt, he commissioned somebody to design a tartan and weave a kilt for him, and the English nobility suddenly found that it was fashionable to have a kilt. And a lot of the English nobility had bought land in Scotland after the Scottish clan chiefs sold out following the Battle of Culloden, and they'd been given a land title on a bit of paper. So these English nobility commissioned people to design different tartans and weave them, and the whole thing got its start about 140 years ago, I suppose. You know, this idea that every clan in Scotland had its own personal individual tartan. So these people who live in Australia, most of them might get one holiday in Scotland if they're lucky in their whole life, and they've read books about it and put a lot of work into it. They fondly imagine that they are being genuine and authentic. I don't think they really are, but you know, okay, it's not my trip. So you could say they're eccentrics, all right? Now, I'm an eccentric, they're eccentrics, they're allowed to be eccentrics. But I don't say everybody has to be an eccentric. Sometimes I make a movie dressed up to look like Biggles, leather helmet and goggles, white silk scarf, you know, leather gauntlets. Now, my grandfather wore clothes like that in the First World War when he was a pilot. Does this mean that I should suggest to the Chamber of Commerce we have an Australian Flying Corps-led economic revival in Glen Innes where we all dress like Snoopy and the Red Baron for a weekend? Is this going to attract flying Fruit Loops from all over the world to come to Glen Innes so we can all tell lies about how well we would have flown a Sop with Camel or a Fokker triplane? No, I think I'd get laughed out of the park if I did that. So somehow, strangely, when the Chamber of Commerce said let's have a Celtic festival and this will function like a cargo cult in Papua New Guinea, you know, instead of making offerings to the carved wooden aeroplane in the hope that fleets of transport planes will come and drop parachute loads of food like they did in the Second World War, we're going to have these little fake Scottish, fake Irish, fake English tourist traps all clustered together on top of Martin's Lookout, which became Centennial Park and is now the Standing Stones. Right? It's a commercial marketing ploy, or it's a harmless eccentricity, but it certainly shouldn't be taken seriously. And anybody who thinks they are serious about their heritage and they genuinely do want to overthrow the Australian local, state and federal government and tear down the social infrastructure and reduce everybody in Australia to sitting around in a cave eating a haggis listening to a bagpipe, because that's how the Scots would have done things on a rainy day, I think if you're seriously after doing that, and that's why you're wearing a kilt, marching up the main street of Glen Innes, then I think ASIO should lock you up and put you in Guantanamo with the rest of the crazy, racist, supremacist, political Fruit Loops. You know, the Scottish Taliban is what it amounts to, if that's what they're really after. So I've thought it was a joke, and I've covered it as a joke. But anyway, let's go and have a look at what actually happened at the 20th Annual Celtic Festival at Glen Innes. Now, in a sense, I really didn't need to go to the festival. I was at Waitalabar at the Stockwood Festival myself, which I thought was much more fun. And that meant that on the Saturday I was preparing for a late night, so I didn't get out of bed and go and have a look at this. But you know, this is the 2011 photograph, I suppose, in the brochure that the local paper has put together to publicise the upcoming event when this was published. This year they wanted to honour the Celtic nations of Brittany in France and Galicia in Asturias, which are autonomous principalities in the northwest of Spain. Yeah, okay, that's very Celtic. But, like I said, there's the Chamber of Commerce angle, right? These are the local businesses which prop up the cargo cult. Here we have Steve Toms, the Mayor of the Glen Innes 7 Council, Chief Guardian of the Australian Standing Stones. And he says, "Welcome to the 2012 Australian Celtic Festival and to Glen Innes, Celtic country. The traditional custodians of this land are the Ngurubal people. I would firstly like to acknowledge the elders both past and present." And then we get on with all the Celtic stuff. So good on you, Steve. I'm glad you mentioned the Curries. And Wendy Watts is the chairman of the Australian Celtic Festival Committee. Right, she used to run the Crofters Cottage up there. And here we have the map showing, as I said, Keltoi, ignorant barbarians north of the Alps. And they have dances for children as well as grown-ups. And to attract the crowd, high-grade professional musicians are engaged by the festival committee. And because the gate takings don't cover the cost of setting up the festival, that's why the local council agrees to subsidise the festival in the interests of propping up the local economy. Okay, so gentle eccentrics or potential white supremacist terrorists, grown-ups who like to play dress-ups and have a bit of a joke while playing bagpipes at a haggis, or like the leprechaun at the Combined Gaelic Clans Incorporated Celtic shop. Do you take the whole thing seriously? Well, the Chamber of Commerce takes it seriously. So, Glen Innes Examiner, Thursday, May the 10th, 2012. In the letters column, Banner Bard. Continues. Runs down here with a response. Banner Bard. On Sunday, the 6th of May 2012, a most shameful and disgraceful event occurred at the Australian Standing Stones in Glen Innes during the 20th Celtic Festival. The Combined Gaelic Clans of Australasia is a dynamic national and international organisation with members in Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, USA and England. We are not a Scottish clan but a Gaelic clan comprising members from all the Celtic nations with our properly inaugurated chieftain. As we have done in previous years, we set up our tent and displayed information for visitors who may want information or to join our organisation. Until 12 p.m. Sunday all was well and we were enjoying the festival following the kirking of the tartan and a very stirring sermon by the Uniting Church minister Mr Russell Morris, where he encouraged all those of Gaelic Celtic heritage to stand together and live together in peace and harmony. All of the clans who had banners then proceeded to parade up Tinwald Hill, where they had the opportunity to declare their clans individually over the microphone. In stark contrast to his words, it was then that something truly outrageous and shocking occurred. Our banner bearer was a gentleman by the name of Ray Parry, who has been a member of our organisation for 4 years. Ray comes from Lismore and has an intellectual disability. As Ray proceeded to follow the others, he was stopped by security personnel and told he was not allowed to present the banner and had to remain behind. Ray became very confused and put the banner down. At this stage, our chieftain, unaware of what had taken place, arrived on the scene in preparation for following the banner up the hill. He instructed Ray to pick up the banner and proceed, only to be stopped once more by security. Ray could not understand what was happening and was reduced to tears. In the meantime, our Victorian Commissioner, Laird Cameron Burgess, and his fiancée Vicky were involved in a disgraceful display of authoritarianism up on Tynwald Hill. Climbing the hill with the Combined Gaelic Clans of Victoria banner, Cameron was stopped by security and in an embarrassing and humiliating manner was made to stand in the corner while the security guard stood over him, preventing his progress to the microphone and indeed standing in front of the banner. His fiancée Vicky Creed was taking photographs, saw what was happening and was immediately enraged by this insult and galvanised into action. She climbed the hill and in a loud voice proclaimed, "The Combined Gaelic Clans of Australasia are here!" She was then, quote, stood over, bullied and harassed, unquote, by a man who holds a high position of authority within the Scottish community and should know better. To say that our people were shocked and appalled by this would be an understatement. Why were, quote, security, unquote, swarming all over the field at a peaceful Sunday afternoon event? Just for a moment you could have been forgiven for thinking you were in Belfast. We believe that the actions taken by these people were deliberately provocative in an attempt to discredit our organisation. The unusual presence of, quote, security, unquote, means they knew there would be trouble when they stopped us doing what we have every right to do as a family of clans and have done every other year. They behaved disgracefully, using bullying and standover tactics to intimidate not only our Victorian President Brackett, who is only a small woman, and he is a man over 6 feet tall, close bracket, but a man, bracket, Ray Parry, close bracket, whose disability gave him only limited understanding of what was taking place and left him distraught and almost hysterical. An outrage has occurred here, a slur on our community and a direct attack on a locally based organisation which has worked hard to promote the Gaelic Celtic heritage in Australia. Why did these people do this? You may well ask. We intend to find out, and they will be made to pay for their disgusting and outrageous behaviour. Nora Sheridan, the Combined Gaelic Clans of Australasia, Incorporated, Glen Innes. And Nora is, of course, the naturopath married to Sean MacDonald Sheridan in the health food shoppy, beside the Combined Gaelic Clans Cultural Centre. 2 doors down anyway. They set it up. And in response, the Examiner contacted Mrs. Wendy Watts, chairman of the Australian Celtic Festival, in its relation to the concerns raised by the Combined Gaelic Clans. Mrs. Watts said that the procession of the tartans and clan banners is not controlled by the Australian Celtic Festival Committee, so it's not her pussycat, and was the responsibility of the Scottish Heritage Council. Their ruling is that it is only a procession for individual clan banners. Right, gotcha there, Sean. You're not an individual clan, so you can't go to their procession. It's a ruling that has been there for a long time, so the Combined Celtic Clans should have been aware of this. It was clearly announced twice prior to the procession. The ACF committee supports the protocols that are put in place by each of the Celtic nations, and they all have their own ceremonies, Mrs. Watts said. Okay? So, what a lovely little shit fight. So, apparently what we've got is a case where the established administration of the Scottish clans, and the Irish clans I suppose, don't like the idea of a usurper. And they've told him twice, don't bring your banner to our procession, and he's brung his banner anyway, and they knew he was going to do it because he's probably told them he was going to do it. Told them they couldn't stop him, so they've organised a security guard presence. Now, are they taking it seriously? Are they grown-ups playing dress-ups? Are they potential tourists? Or is it a cargo cult mentality and they're fighting for the spoils? Interesting, isn't it? Shitfight at the Celtic Festival. 20th Annual Celtic Festival, Glen Innes, 2012. May the 5th. Yeah, the Shitfight was on the 6th. Living like a kilt in Australia makes as much sense as putting wing mirrors on your plough so you can see who the dickhead is who's busting the landscape. Ciao.